Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. I promised you I'd be back today after this morning's broadcast. Busy day. Lots to tell you about the final day for the defense in the Tamara Lich and Chris Barber trial. Stay tuned.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist.
Yes, thank you for liking the station, telling your friends and family that this news option is out there, because I try to give you all the news you need to know. I just thought of that the other day. It seems to work, doesn't it? Along with resolve to resist. That's what we're doing. We are resolving to resist Trudeau's tyranny, anybody's tyranny. Don't think it's all going to be better just if Trudeau's gone. Whether or not he's replaced by Mark Carney or we have another government, we have to keep pushing for the right things, pushing for principles. And I'll tell you why. This is a trial I have been going to since September 5th, and which won't officially be over until September 9th. Yeah, it's the last day today for the defense to do their summation. And Lawrence Greenspon did an outstanding job of that today. Tour de force. And you'll see him responding to some questions. Wish we could show you some footage of inside the courtroom. Oh, no, we can't do that. I can't even take any pictures. But we talked to Lawrence outside the courtroom, and there were some other reporters there. Yeah, as this being his last chance at bat before and I don't know why the prosecution is getting up for another time for another summation. They've already had their summation, but yet here they are again, rebutting. It's going to be the same nonsense. You know that. It's going to be the same nonsense about these people really seem to be peaceful, but they weren't really intending to be peaceful. They had bad thoughts in their head, anticipating the online thoughts crime bill that's coming from Trudeau. But this was a real exercise in patience for Tamara and Chris, who had to come out here multiple times. Yes, they are getting their legal bills paid for by concerned conservative organizations, but they're not paying for everything. They're not paying for the disruption in their work and their life. They're not paying for the hotels and the meals. They're not paying for the inconvenience. They're not paying for everything that comes with having to come to Ottawa as many times as they have. Thank God they don't have to come out in person for the prosecution summation, which I say I don't know what the hell that's about. They can do that online on a Zoom call, presumably. So that was the only blessing, because as I reported last week, the Crown actually did say today, Your Honor, can we just provide a written submission? We'd like this to wrap up today. The judge said, well, I'd prefer if we just came back in September, and they started negotiating back and forth. They discussed Friday, September 13th, and everybody said, ooh, might be dangerous. So they ended up Monday, September 9th. I will not be going back to hear 2 hours of the Mutt and Jeff do their prosecution spiel. It really is quite something to listen to these two. Half the time they don't know what they're airing, and when they do air material, it's always positive towards the defense. I don't know what it's been a clown show from day one from the prosecution, from the Crown. It really has. I've said that from day one. It's been a clown show. And it's all that has done, of course, is help the defense. They've done a lot of work for them. They've done a lot of work for the defense. There's no question about that. So I'm going to show you some clips today, because unlike a lot of these armchair journalists who can't write a sentence or a paragraph or interview anybody, I actually go out and do that, and I write a story. And I've written a story about this for the Post Millennial, and it's not up yet, but I invite you to have a look at that when it is up, and it will be up probably tonight, tomorrow at the earliest. But if you're not out interviewing people, don't call yourself a journalist. Call yourself, I don't know, a clip player or whatever. Here we are. I really wanted to show you. So we're just walking across the street because they seem to have cleared people from the courthouse today. And I just want to say, This is across the street from the courthouse on Elgin Street in Ottawa. Some of these folks have been here for over 100, almost 100 days. Actually, I think they said 1,000 days. Yeah, they're coming on 1,000 days, and here they are. So you don't just go to these events to talk to the lawyers and to talk to the people who are being prosecuted. You talk to those ordinary Canadians who are out there protesting, and this is what the Freedom Convoy protest was all about. It was about our freedom of speech and our freedom to protest. And that's what Lawrence Greenspon made it quite clear about today. And I'll say more about that in a minute.
Crisis is very real, present, and at the emergency threshold, it is often largely ignored. To sustain the funding base beyond the crisis.
So, hey, folks, can I get you guys to do a rousing cheer for Chris and Tamara?
Sure. A what?
A rousing cheer for.
What's that? Oh, a rousing cheer. I was cheering. I was on live just a few minutes ago when he came in.
I'm just going to get it.
To the real issues. Investors will respond if they see profit at the end of the process. Sounds like public health? Sounds like the best of humanity.
When he was coming in. What time is he coming out?
Well, we're just going in now for 2 o'clock. So how do you guys feel today? Is this an historic day for Canada?
It is. It is. Very important. It's very important.
You think Chris and Tamara are going to win this thing?
They already won. We won.
How do you mean?
Investors will follow if they see profit at the end of the process.
This is not just the war. The war really is not about us peanuts. It's Satan against Jesus all over again.
Nature was hijacked.
Yeah.
You think they're legally, though? Are they going to win this?
Yes.
Yes.
Because eventually the truth is coming out. Even Dina Sharif across the street was saying, wow, they're going based on nothing these last couple of days. Dina Sharif hates Tamara and Chris, hates Pat and us. But she was saying some pretty good things. She says the judge was kind of on her side and stuff, but there's a lot of petty stuff talking about. So I think it's gonna, they're just they're just using Tamara and Chris and Pat for the money. They're making money, right? Follow the money. But in the end, it's going to be like, we already won, folks. We just have to stand proud.
You want me to use your name or you want to be anonymous?
Yes, please. Use my name.
Can you
Francine Courcy, Courcy, at me.com. Courcy@me.com.
All right.
Email me September 16. I'm bringing a affidavit times 338 times to hand out to all the members that are coming back from
I'll be there.
Vacation. Bring a lunch. I'm going to be there all day.
Thank you. Well, Dean Martin always said, the great Dean Martin, a mentor of mine in terms of singing, always said, I always play to the common folk. And I do too, because if you listen to average Canadians, there's a lot of wisdom there. And there was a lot of wisdom in what this woman said here. And I think that's very, very important. Average Canadians aren't fooled by this nonsense. They're not fooled by this BS. They're not fooled by the government crap that just completely satiates this Trudeau government. And Canadians aren't fooled by this. So I want to go to my interview with Lawrence Greenspon. This is immediately after the trial ended today. And like I say, they're coming back for 2 hours on September 9th. So the prosecution could have one more kick at the can. And like I say, I'm not going into Ottawa for that because I know exactly what it's going to be. They're going to regurgitate their talking points again. But I really think there were some excellent points raised today by Lawrence Greenspon, who I've really, I have developed a tremendous amount of respect for this man because I think he's one of the best. I'm just trying to find my notebook here because obviously I recorded everything, but it's very interesting some of the things he said today. And he is one of the best lawyers in Ottawa. He not only does criminal cases, he does civil cases. He's also the guy who's defending Dave Menzies. It was actually Dave Menzies is suing, and Rebel News is suing government, the Trudeau government, because Menzies was arrested and bumped quite severely by Chrystia Freeland's bodyguards. You remember that? He was just going up, approaching her with a microphone, trying to ask some questions in Toronto. And this bald skinhead guy, RCMP, security detachment, ran right into Dave Menzies, and they hauled him into a paddy wagon, took him off the jail. And I said at the time, this is outrageous because, are any of us safe? And I wrote a column at the time because the mainstream media called Dave Menzies a entertainment guy or an entertainer or a news personality. Couldn't call him a journalist, even though he's a better journalist than most people on CBC can ever hope to be. But I ran it. Dave was there today, and he said, "Please send me that column." I didn't see it, but it was nice to see Dave. You know who else was there? Joe Warmington, another great columnist in this country, a staple, a part of the Toronto Sun for so long, and is part of the Sun chain. He is part of that great generation of the Sun that wasn't afraid to offend, to ruffle feathers, to say things, and to write columns honestly and completely frankly. And that's what I try to do, of course. If you read my columns in Human Events on Substack and everything I've written over the years, I just tell you how I think, how I feel, and I don't care if it offends people. Obviously, I don't use language or terminology that is grosser or salacious or racially offensive. That's never an area I've had to go to or want to go to. I use arguments that are succinct and comprehensive. But what the real genius of Lawrence Greenspon's defense was, he went at the very issue of what did Tamara Lich or Chris Barber do that was illegal? Can you name one single thing? And the prosecution never did. It was all about what they might do, what they might be thinking, and how other people interpreted what they said. And Lawrence Greenspon said today, you can't blame Tamara Lich or Chris Barber for the actions of other people. You have to judge them on what they said and what they did. And they didn't block roads. We heard the other day from Diana Magus, the other lawyer for the Freedom Convoy. She pointed out how Chris Barber went out of his way to clear the traffic, not block it. He was working with the truckers to ensure everybody was safe and not breaking the law. Again and again and again, this comes up in the testimony. So you're going to have a chance to listen to Greenspon respond to my questions, but I just want to make sure I got everything in here, because he says some extremely fascinating things about what this trial was really about. And he quoted Benjamin Franklin for saying that if you're prepared to sacrifice your liberty for security, you don't deserve either. Or if that's what this is, and he says Canada has done that in the past, and that's what the Freedom Convoy is all about. There are some Canadians, I think they're a minority now, who think, crush the Freedom Convoy because we didn't feel quite secure. We like to feel secure. We like the government arm around our necks. That's how we feel secure. And Greenspon's saying you're not secure and you're not free and you're never going to be free. And if the government is allowed to set a precedent with this case, none of us are going to be free. So let's listen to this interview. I think it's very good. Your summation that disruption is. Let's get to the beginning here. Beginning of your summation that disruption is a fundamental component of protest.
Yes.
And it seemed to me like the Crown kept thinking that if anybody was inconvenienced in all this, that somehow was unlawful. Is that how you were taking this?
Well, that's the fundamental problem, and it's what was addressed by our Court of Appeal in Tremblay. And like I've said from the beginning, in a battle or a contest between freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, both of which are in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and are constitutionally protected, in a battle between those things and the right to enjoyment of property, which is nowhere to be found in the Constitution, there is no contest. Freedom of expression freedom of peaceful assembly, which is what this is all about, wins every time.
Do you think the Ottawa Police Services created this crisis? Because you mentioned the fact that they told them to go downtown, to park their cars. They didn't issue any parking violations.
Yeah.
Was that a real issue here?
Oh, it's a big issue. It's one of the two things that distinguishes this case from any other of the cases that are before Her Honor. The two things are, number one, they were told where to go, how to get there, and where to park, and they did that. There's no other case out of the 100 cases that the judge had before her where that's been the situation, where the authorities have told them, go over there, park there. And that's the one thing. And the other thing, of course, is that there's Justice McLean's orders in which he specifically preserved their right to continue to peacefully assemble. And he did that in the middle of this demonstration. So those two things are not anywhere found in any of the previous case law, and that's why I suspect the judge has indicated right at the end that this is an unprecedented situation.
And my last question, at the very end, you suggest that this is like, as Benjamin Franklin said, people who sacrifice liberty for security. And we might end up apologizing if these two are convicted. Is that how you feel about this?
It's a trade-off, unfortunately, that Canadians have been, historically, we've been prepared to trade freedoms for security. We've done it over and over and over again. We did it to the Italian Canadians. We did it to the Japanese Canadians. We did it to those who were arrested without any rights in the War Measures Act in 1970. We've done it over and over again. And every time we wait a generation or two, and then we apologize to those people. So my hope is that we won't be apologizing for anything in this circumstance. Perhaps we can apologize to the people whose bank accounts were frozen. Perhaps we can apologize to the people who were arrested under an Emergency Measures Act that should never have been invoked.
Thank you, Mr. Greenspon. Excellent interview. And I hope emergencies actually never been invoked. Not surprised to hear him say that. But what about an apology to those who had their bank accounts frozen? I thought that was a novel thing to say. Yeah, where's that apology? You think that's ever going to happen in the Trudeau government? No, they want to do it again. But I think this is, and he squarely places the blame for the gridlock that occurred in downtown Ottawa on the Ottawa Police Service. They created their own problem by telling the truckers to park downtown, around the street, block traffic. And then the RCMP and the Ottawa Police Service then started closing all the roads leading into downtown. Why? What was the point of that? So it made gridlock. It made traffic congestion. The Ottawa Police got, incredibly incompetent. I think they're vying for the incompetency award with the Secret Service in the United States. They were incredibly incompetent in this operation. And you remember the first chief of police and who resigned in the middle of this. Then his deputy, the cue ball, who looked a bit like Mussolini, he took over and then started threatening everybody. Like, we're going to put you all in jail just because we don't like what you're saying. Absolute insanity. But I'm going to read a couple more things from the story I filed today, which I say is not up yet, but it will be soon. So in a passionate conclusion to his summation at the trial of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, defense counsel Lawrence Greenspon said, it would be wrong to criminalize their behavior, meaning Chris and Tamara, in these unique circumstances. I want to recite the words from Benjamin Franklin, who said that those who would sacrifice essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Greenspon said, noting that Canada has sacrificed the liberty of other groups in history and ultimately apologized for violating constitutionally entrenched and protected fundamental freedoms. That's what he said today. He further said, the Crown seeks to criminalize the words and actions of leaders of a protest in which those leaders consistently urged others to be peaceful and to cooperate with police, Greenspon said. The Crown asks that those leaders be held criminally responsible for the actions of unidentified others who were directed into the downtown core of Ottawa And they were allowed to stay for a 3-week period of time without so much as a single parking ticket being issued to anyone. Yeah, we could have solved this with a few parking tickets. But here we are, day 44 of a mischief trial that should not have ever gone to court. I've said that from day one. It should never have gone to court. And what this is a political show trial. I mean, yeah, it's not original to say that, but I said that from day one. Greenspon declared that this trial is about potentially denying fundamental rights in Canada and the Crown's efforts to make it a contest between constitutionally protected fundamental freedoms and the right to enjoyment of property. There is no contest, and I will take your honor to the case law that establishes that principle, Greenspon. Greenspon did so later in his presentation, citing examples of rulings upholding the right to protest over any presumed right to enjoyment of property. The lawyer said any protest is designed to induce some level of disruption to make a point, but causing inconvenience does not make that protest illegal. Now that, I think, was the crux of the thing. So here they are. This all occurred as a result of a Freedom Convoy that I covered at the time, and I was proud to be there covering. And as I said, if you watch my episode, if you watched me on Redacted last night, I was talking about this with Clayton Morris, and I said I'm there fighting for their freedom. I am there. I'm there every day that I can be, reporting the news objectively. This is objective news. There is no case against them. I view this trial like I view the Second World War. There's only one side to be on. You really can't say, well, I think the Crown has some good points here, and I understand that they could be right too. No, they're not right. This was clearly a seminal historic moment in Canada. These two, along with a lot of other people, stood up for my rights, stood up against COVID mandates, stood up against a dictatorial Trudeau government that likes to say whatever it wants to say and do whatever it wants to do and impose its will upon Canadians. And they said no. And so because they said no, they stood up for my freedom, and I'm going to continue to stand up for their freedom. I think that's the least I can do. Now, what else happened today? If you're interested, Bobby Kennedy Jr., who I have a lot of time and admiration for, is dropping out of the race, and he's going to endorse Donald Trump.
I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money.
Says it all, doesn't it? That's what the Democratic Party has become. Unfortunately, the Republican Party can be that way too. It's a bit of a uniparty, but there's still more principle on the side of the Republican Party. And Donald Trump is still a rebel. He's still out there, I hope, to some degree, fighting the deep state and the establishment. If he doesn't, we're all cooked. But I think having Kennedy on your team will make Trump that much more honest, and I think will guarantee a victory for sanity in the November 5th presidential elections in the United States. A little more from Bobby.
Causes drove me to enter this race in the first place, primarily. And these are the principal causes that persuaded me to leave the Democratic Party and run as an independent. And now to throw my support to President Trump. The causes were free speech, the war in Ukraine, and the war on our children. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money.
Yeah. Couldn't say it better. I'm so happy he's jumped on board Trump's campaign because I think this is going to be a very interesting last 2 months of the presidential election campaign. Anyway, thank you for watching again today. Please like and share this broadcast. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. You've done a great job in the last week in doing that. We've boosted our numbers. We're on a upward course again. We're moving upwards, and we're going to keep moving upwards because when you're doing the right thing, eventually everything comes into place. Everything falls into place when you work hard and you have an objective that's rational, realizable, and just. And that's what I believe I'm doing here with Stand on Guard on this channel. Thank you for your support. I'm going to leave you for now. I'll be back again this weekend, probably at least once, maybe twice. The fight is not over, and we need to fight this battle together. Thank you so much for joining me again. I'm your host, David Krayden, bringing you all the news you need to know.